we can begin. We've got 22 letters to look at in detail. And I thought we would just start by turning our Bibles to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 3, so that we can understand why we are taking the time to look at the ancient Hebrew letters and the ancient Hebrew language. We're also going to look at how the Paleo-Hebrew speaks to us in picture form. But I wanted to start off, some of you will have already done this, but it's in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 3. And when we looked yesterday in the first chapter of Revelation chapter 1, we saw very clearly that Jesus took the name of the Aleph and the Tav. The message there that the Aleph has the ability, I'm going to show you exactly how it's done, to be number 1 or to be number 1000. We know that we're upon this earth today and we will be brought back, or we will come back with a glorified Jesus Christ, and we will live under his blessings for 1000 years. Now, when you look here, and I've written it down, the detailed blessings promised to those who observe the entire Torah begins with the Aleph in here. It begins, look, in verse 3 of 26. And the word that I've shown you there is the word im, and it's an Aleph and a mem, and it means if. And we can read together verse 3. The blessings for obedience are here seen, and they start here in verse 3. This is how a Hebrew reader would see it starting, not in 1 and 2, in 3. And it would start with if. But when you see the word if, it's really an Aleph and a mem, meaning im. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments so as to carry them out, then I shall give you rains in their season, so that the land will yield produce, and the trees of the field, hallelujah, which we are, will bear their fruit. And then you come to the last verse of the blessing, which is in verse 13. And here, the word here, verse 13, finishes with the word, where we've got the word erect, in the translation of the Hebrew Bible that I've got, it says upright. So it starts with an Aleph, and the last letter, as you can see here on my notes, is a Tav. The last letter there, I'm going to get that little spotlight out again now. Oh, can you see here? The end of that letter there is the word upright. So we began with an A for im, which is if you walk in my commandment, in my statutes. But then the last letter of the blessing is a Tav. So we keep seeing this order all the time. And so the Tav here is the last letter of this word. It looks like the word cam, yes, I can't quite think of what that word means, but look, it finishes in a T, and it's the Hebrew word for upright. And we're going to read together verse 13 of Leviticus 26, verse 3. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, so that you should not be their slaves. And I broke the bars of your yoke, and I made you walk erect, or I made you walk upright. And if you want to just turn in the back of your Bibles to 6968, you can see the pronunciation of that word, 6968. It is a funny word if anyone's got it. Mine is on page 2011. 6968. It's kum me uth. Ku mem e uth. Ku mem e uth. And it means, look, here, it means to be elevated. and it means to be erect, to stand up straight, and it means to be upright. So all I was trying to show you today, and we've got plenty of time at the moment, it looks like us over the age of 65 are going to be shut in, over 65 now, for at least a year. And I'm trying to show you today why we are looking at the Hebrew alphabet all the time and finding it to clarify so many things. So when we go back now to Leviticus chapter 26, we can see that once God started to speak about the blessing, he chose to start it. So you could put a little circle round the if, because that's where the Aleph is, that's where the oxen is, and that's where the leader is. And I'll go and show you that in a moment. I'm doing it right now. I've got my red pen. I'm going to put a circle around the if, and I'm going to do a picture of an Aleph and a mem safit at the end. And then I'm going to go to chapter 13, and I'm going to put a circle around erect. I'm going to write upright there, and I am going to put a tav. So if anyone talks to me about blessings and cursings, I can go to Leviticus chapter 26, and I could say the blessings from verses 3 to 13, start with an Aleph, the oxen, and they finish with a cross. Meaning, this is how we're meant to be thinking. All our blessings come by the strength of the oxen. Now, the opposite of that is if you go to Deuteronomy chapter 11 and go to verse 26 to 28. Deuteronomy 11, verse 26 to 28. And here, and it says here, let me just go and get my Hebrew Bible again. Sorry. I've written it all down on the notes, but I like to look at it myself again and again so that I understand. So it's Deuteronomy chapter 11, forgive me, please, 26 to 28. And we can see here, it begins here. I don't know why I do that, because I could just go like this. It starts off verse 26 of 11, and it says, see, I'm setting before you today a blessing and a curse. In your Hebrew alphabet, it says et ha baruka. Et, so it's beginning again with an Aleph, but he's actually showing you, look, the curse comes from the same place as the blessing, because God is a God of justice and a God of righteousness. So that's how we see it in the Hebrew Bible. It begins with an et, which means that there's a direct connection with the next. The hey is a definite article for the word the, and that is a baruka, which I've written there, and that comes like it almost comes from the word barak. It means blessing, the blessing. Then when you get to 28, verse 28, here, you can see the last letter here is the kel Allah, the kel Allah. So we've got the et, the hey there, and then we come to here, and the word kelaha. Regarding the blessing, the definite article is used, which you said, while regarding the curse, this is the bit I wanted to show you. The word for the curse does not have a definite article, and that is a definite article there. The Aleph and the Tav is given with the blessing, but the Aleph and the Tav is not given with the curse. So shall we just read together, please, verse 26 and 28. And again, if you wanted to take your pen, he starts off, see, I am setting before you today a blessing. And I'm just going to write an Aleph and a Tav over there, because that is what we're just seeing there. It's et, the blessing. There is a provision of the Aleph and the Tav bringing the blessing. But when you get to this word, why hasn't it got the Aleph and the Tav through it? Because it's not the will of God for people to walk in cursing. So if you go back to verse 26, see, I am setting before you today a blessing, which is the word baruka, and a curse, which is the word kelalah. The blessing, if you listen to the commandments of the Lord your God, which I'm commanding you today, and the curse if you do not listen to the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the way which I'm commanding you today by following other gods, which you have not known. So, as we move down, the Midrash explains that the word et indicates the blessing which goes from the Aleph to the Tav. And just for a moment now, if I just go to here, oh no, I want to go up to the top. Sorry, everybody. Here we go. So as we can see here, the Aleph is what we've just looked at there. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The Tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The first letter brings us to the oxen. The last letter is the picture of the Tav, which is the cross. And we've looked at it a few times, but we'll just look at it again. So we start with an oxen, which is number 1. We then go to number 2, which is a house. Look, that there is a tent, a house or a tent. That is the letter bet, and it has the value of 2. These are the picture symbols. Then you get to the gimel. The gimel has got a little foot, and it is the image there of the camel, somebody operating in kindness, and that is number 3. We then come to the Dalet. The Dalet is who the kind one knocks on the door. Can you see a picture there of a door? And it's like that picture there, this old picture here, is a picture of a door as it hangs from a tent. And then we come to the 5th letter, which is the letter of the breath. And it's a window, look here. And it's a window meaning to reveal. If you've got 4 walls, you don't see out. But if you've got a window, there's a revelation. You see something different. And when you get here, here's the little tent peg. Here's the Vav, number 6. And you can see the little, they've put a picture there of 3 tent pegs, which I suppose in one way reminds us of the 3 nails that were put into our Saviour on the cross. And then we come down to the 7th letter, which we were looking at last week, which is the Zayin. And the Zayin, hallelujah, number 7, spiritual perfection, is the picture of a sword. And the sword brings us all the safety, because he is the het, the 8th letter. It's got a little roof sticking up to show it points to heaven. So number 8 points to heaven. Number 8, we know the young men are circumcised on the 8th day to show they're not like any others in the world. 8 people were saved with the man of rest, Noah, on the ark, and his name had to have et, that chet in it. And there's the fence. We then come to number 9, as we were looking yesterday in Revelation chapter 9, is when the lid comes off the bottomless pit. And the 9th letter here, the tet, has got a coiled up snake there. And so the word Satan has that tov in the middle of it, that tet there, het and tet. We then come to the 10th letter, which is the yud, and we're going to be looking how these fit in. Can you see that it's either a yud or a yod? Some say Y-O-O-D, Y-U-D, but there is an outstretched hand, a yod, with the value of number 10. And then we come to these letters, which are the kaf, which is that is if it's in the beginning of a word or in the middle, and then this is if it's at the end. And this is a picture of a a hand. So we've got a hand stretched out, and then we've got a palm. That's what a calf is. It's a palm. And then we come to the 12th letter, which has the value of 30, because once they get to 10, they add up in numbers of 10. So we can see the Lamed, the only one that's above the line, picture of the teacher, 3 times 10, and is a picture there of a shepherd's crook, which we're going to be looking at later. And then we come to the water, the Hashemayim, the water, the Ma'im, and then you've got an ordinary mem, which would be at the beginning of the letter, and then you've got the mem, which is at the end of the letter, and it means this is a picture of a piece of water, and it means water, chaos, strong water. We're going to look at that a moment. For the woman, her woman, when her waters break, is all to do with this. When the lady's waters break when she's giving birth, it's all to do with this gushing water. It means the word for woman means a nourisher from strong water. And then we come from the mem. That was number 13. This is number 14, and it is a nun. I don't know why it hasn't got the nun Safit there, because it should have. But the nun is a picture of vitality and life. It has the value of a 50, which is the number of Jubilee. And if you just go to your Bibles again, I know where you know we're going. It's Psalm 73. And this is a secret. It's Psalm 72, verse 17. Why do they use this word for the Mashiach? But they do. They call the Messiah a nun. They call him a nun for many reasons, if you understand the Hebrew alphabet. 50 is the number of Jubilee. 5 is the number of law and grace, multiplied by 10, which is the number of God's hand, the Yod, and it means nothing lacking. 10 instructions given from Sinai. And if you go to Psalm 72, you've got the end of the Exodus section of the 5 books of the Psalm Torah. In a way, they call this the Torah of David, and it is the heading, the reign of the righteous man. And this is where you find this word nun. And he says here, verse 17, may his name endure forever, may his name increase. It means like the fish. That word there is, may his name none. May his name none is speaking of the Messiah of 1,000 years. And it means may his name propagate like fish, because fish have within them many sperms. May his name none. May his name endure forever. May his name none like a fish in the sea, as long as the sun shines, and let men bless themselves by him. Let all nations call him blessed. So this is a special letter in many ways, because it's a messianic indication. And that's what we're learning here. Why? Because he is going to have for 1,000 years people reproducing. They will never be an unsaved Jew again. And it will be the role of the Jewish people and the saints to teach the nations of the goodness of the nun. May his name none is how many rabbis see him here, as one who increases like a swarm of fish in the ocean. And then it goes on to finish the chapter of Exodus. Can you see they're bringing them out of the wilderness, because this is the end of the second book of Exodus. And it says they're finding the Messiah here, and may his name none, which means he's got to reproduce, because it means to re-sprout, and it refers to a faithful servant. But the Jobel word, the value of 50, points to the number of redemption and freedom. And then when it says, may his name none, he said, but then it goes to verse 18, blessed be the Lord God, the God of Israel, who alone works wonders, hallelujah. And blessed be his glorious name. Well, his name here is none, forever. And then look, it shows the fish and the activation, the activity of life. And may the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. And after that, we come to the Samach. So the Samach is number 60. And the Samach there, as we said yesterday, the Samach corresponds to in the I'm just quickly checking something here. The 60, which is, yeah, it is the sign in heaven, the song that's going to be sang. And that is a picture of how they were looked after. That's the rabbis say that outside is a protective cover for the dwellings of Israel, which will be kept safe in the middle of it. And that is a picture of a prop that props up a tree. But the value of that letter, isn't it? If it's following 50, the value of the letter is 60. And this is how a rabbi looks at it. If you go to the Song of Solomon for a moment, please. Song of Solomon. And all the way through, brothers and sisters, as we look and as we spend these days in lockdown looking at this, these words just do us so much good, because we get to the picture of the wedding day. Well, think about the Messiah. The Messiah is known here with the number 50, 50 being the number of the nun. You follow it down to 60, and then you turn to Song of Solomon, chapter 3, and you look at a heading of verses 6 to verse 8. And you see here a picture of how a rabbi sees the coming Messiah. Well, we've just said the Messiah is going to increase, but have a look at this. Where's he coming up from? And this is why I love it, and maybe you love it. This is how the rabbi, searching for the Messiah, knowing that the building blocks of the universe are from the Aleph to the Tav. So they're following the order all the time. And it says, this is Solomon's wedding day. Who, verse 6, what? I mean, it actually means who. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh, which is death, and frank incense. Frank means to frankly give, with all scented powders of the merchantman, the merchant who bought the pearl in the field. Behold, it is the traveling couch, which is the resting place of Solomon. When you see Solomon, it's like Solomon, it's shalom, peace. And look what they say. They're thinking Samach. 60 men around it, of the mighty men of Israel. And all of these men, all of them are wielders of the sword. All of these 60 are expert in war. Each man has his sword at his side, guarding against the terror of the night. King Solomon has made for himself a chariot, a sedan chair, from the timber of Lebanon. Remember, the cedars of Lebanon. And here he is, he's showing Jesus. He made its posts of silver, redemption, its back of gold, which is God, isn't it? How we always see it's divinity. And look, its seat of purple, royalty, that which took the blue of heaven and the red of Christ, blue and red, meaning purple fabric, with its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem. And he says, and look, Go forth, O daughters of Zion, and gaze now on King Solomon. So the word Samak means support. And we see it used here as the 60 men. I'm just going to check. I'm just going to get my other Hebrew Bible. Yes. Hallelujah, brothers and sisters. Isn't it wonderful? For me, for you. Wonderful. This is our Savior coming up from the wilderness and showing us very clearly here, 60 men follow it. But you see, when we look at it, behold, the 60 men, where it pleases, coming up out of it like pillars of perfume with myrrh, frankincense, from all the powders of the merchant. Behold, his bed, which is Solomon's here, has got 60 men around it, 60 men, which is what we were looking at. And the 60, it may not indicate it to us, but it indicates this. But you see, the Messiah of Israel is known under the name Nun. The support then is seen that they've received while he's coming up from the wilderness to come to be crowned, look, in Zion. He's received support. So the letter meaning support is 60, and in Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 7, the 60 men around it were wielders of the sword. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? And then you come to the eye, the eye that sees, and that is here, obviously the number 70, which we looked at yesterday. And then we come to the mouth, the pay. The mouth at the beginning of a letter, the pace of it at the end of a letter, which leads us to the righteousness. This is the hook. That is for the word Zion. That's where you get that word. So Zion is showing you all to do with the fish, that he's going to bring his men to Zion because he's caught his men with the hook. And that's the most wonderful thing. If we think now of knowing the word, when he says, I will make you fishers of men, it actually starts with that fish hook. And it means I will pull you up. I will pull you forward. I will cause you. It's the sprout, the fish, the vegetation, the hook. God has hooked his fish. He put his money in the fish, in the mouth of that fish in the sea, to say he owns all that's in the sea. And then we come to the 100. The 100, the cough there. It's a picture look at the back of someone's head, the cough. And Abraham gave birth to Isaac when he was 100 years old. We then come down to the resh. The resh is the picture of a head. The shin is the picture that's on every Jewish door. That symbol there, the shin, the teeth, means also conquering and devouring, but it's the number 300, which is the number of the remnant, and it's the number on the door. And as we looked yesterday, this mirrors Revelation 21, and we come back to houses with doors, but these are in heaven, but surely we'll be met with the peace that Shin symbolizes. And then we come finally to the Tav, which is the picture of the cross. So I hope to, I'll send you the notes, but we've just been looking again. Now, I've written down all that we looked at, and this is just, these are the ways that different people studying the Word of God over the years, maybe 400 or 500 years, this is how they see the Hebrew alphabet. And I've written that down for you there to show you. And again, should we just go through it? The Aleph, which is the picture which we've just seen. It's the picture of the oxen. It shows here might. It shows God. This is what Jewish people say. It shows Torah and Israel are one. And they say here that he is the strength of the Torah. He's the master. He's the king of all the letters. He's the divinity. He's the beginning. We then come to the second one, which the bet is the house. And as we saw before, it was a tent. And it comes, this is where we get the first letter for the word blessing, and for bara, because it's Bereshit bara Elohim. The word for blessing and creation begin with the house. And we're saying here, this is how Jews see it. When they think of the blessing and they think of creation and the house, they immediately think of Moses and Aaron and the two genders, Adam and Eve, because the house is the number of two. And we say as well, for us today, we say it's the second person, the Trinity. When you come to the third letter, the Gimel, which is the picture of the camel, you know, if ever you want help in the in the wilderness to be taken somewhere, it is a camel. But this is a kind camel because it comes from the word gamel, which means to nourish until completely ripe. And as I've said, this is the one who knocks, he knocks on the door of the next letter, the Dalet. But in Numbers 17, verse 23, Aaron's rod, it actually, the word was, it became ripe, it became gamel. We then come to the fourth letter, which is the witness at the door. And as the Jewish people have written here, it's dimensions and concerns, and it's the number 4. Number 4 is the number of creation. And it's also that word, there's dalet for door, but it comes from the Hebrew word delet. And the dalet alludes to the dahal, meaning a pauper who knocks on the door begging for help. And then we come to the fifth letter, which is the hey, the breath of God. But this is how a Jewish person sees it. In writing the hey, it's an abbreviation for God. That's how they see Yod Hey, Vav Hey, Jehovah. Number 6 is the Vav, and it was the picture of a hook because it was a tent and it held everything together. And when they held the curtains together, the curtains and everything, they were all held on hooks. And it denotes here physical completion because it was man born on the 6th day with the possibility of redemption and transformation. Remember, the breath is given to transform men. So that's why we die to self, so that we can become like God wants us to be, just people full of his spirit. And then we came to the Zayin, which is a picture of the sword. And these are not Christians writing this, by the way. These are not Christians. These are men looking for the Mashiach. And then they do, thankfully, many of them do get saved. But the Zayin is said to be the letter of the Spirit. It symbolizes the sword and the seed. Remember when we did that study? And it means that the man needs to be provided for. How is he provided for? By the double-edged sword. Let's just go to that for a moment, please, and just turn to Hebrews 4, verse 12 for a moment, please. Hebrews 4, verse 12. We see it all now in a different context, don't we? Hebrews 4, verse 12. And this is speaking of the believer's rest. And we're told here that we are to mix the word with faith. In verse 1 and 2, therefore let us fear, lest while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you should seem to have come short of it. For indeed we have had good news preached to us, just as they also. But the word, the Logos, they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. And then he goes down to verse 12. For the word of God is living and active. And think of the Zayin here. The Zayin is the sword and the letter of the Spirit. It's active and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, of both joints and marrow, able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him with whom we have to do. When we go back to the word soul, it is our mind, our will, our emotions, and our personality, but it has exactly the same gematria letters as the heavens in Genesis 1, verse 1. So we've got heaven living inside of us. Our spirit man, you are fenced in. Look, you go beyond 7 because you've got the sword. You go beyond 7 to a new beginning, and the new beginning of dying to self is abundant life, which then brings you to the, remember the chet was the fence. The tet here is the snake, the matter of life and death. It means the serpent, Mashiach, 358, the goodness, the serpent, sorry, Nahash, 358, and the goodness is the Mashiach, Messiah, 358. So they would know that those two, something is going to come from the serpent and the goodness. So that letter, the 9th letter, which is 9 fruits of the Spirit, 9 gifts of the Spirit, that is the letter of judgment. 1 just less than 10, which is the hand of God. There is the Yud or the Yod, which is the hand of God, ministering the hand of humility. But it's a hand. We're going to see how the hand is put into the word daddy to make the word, to make some different words up. Can you see here? Now we come to the 11th letter, which is the Kaf. And this is God's palm. It's his work in the Messiah, Yeshua, and it's to the value, as we said yesterday, of 20. And this is the letter that begins the word Ketar, which is what we've said, which means crown. So the crowning work, can you see how they see it? The hand of God, the palm of God, seen in the Messiah, Yeshua, is where the crown comes from. The crown spelt with a kaf, a taf, and a resh. A symboling crown of accomplishment, surely, is God's son. Then we come to the teacher, the lamed, which had the shepherd's crook, the light to the world, man's learning in teaching. And either side, look, of the kaf is there's a kaf, a lamed, and a mem. Either side of the kaf is a lamed and a mem. Melech is the very word meaning king. So the teacher is the king who comes to reveal he is the king. And then we get the water. Remember the picture of the water, the living waters? These living waters here, when we get into it in detail, we'll show you a picture, the living waters. This is why there's 2 forms. There's the Mem and Mem Sophet. It's Moses and Messiah written in 2 forms, open and closed. Can you see that there? That's the open, that is the closed. And here, I'll just go back down to this now. When we see it all, as we go in to study it, we can see why. And then again, here's the nun. Here's the humility, the fish, the reproduction. But the word nun is that nefesh. That's our soul. That's another word for soul. But the word nun, the letter nun, that's a fish, ne is a nun, and a resh is N-E-R, because there'd be a vowel there, and it is a candle. And it's written in 2 forms, the bent and the straight. And the bent ministers, he stooped and bent to lift us up so that we would be straightened, so that we would be lifted up. And then you come to the Samak, supporting the fallen. Can you see that? And the Samak had the value of 60, and it was the support that was seen in the wilderness before the king arrives in Zion to be crowned. divine support wrapped around. Remember the picture, wrapped around. Look, remember the picture. This is how they see it. This is the enclosure for the apple and pupil of God's eye, which is Israel, who will be kept there while they're receiving support in the wilderness. They're coming out. And isn't that wonderful that that support is seen in Song of Solomon, seen in the 60, the Samach, that number 60. They'll have studied this and taken it apart for hundreds of years. And then we come, look, to the eye, the window of the soul. The image is the eye, the sight and the insight. And from the eye, you come to the pay, the mouth, the power of speech, which has to have consistency of mouth and heart. Remember, this comes as well, and we're going to see why. We're going to see why it comes in an open and a closed form. But what comes out of our mouth is consistent with our heart. And we're to guard our heart, because out of it flow the issues of life. Isn't that interesting, brothers and sisters, that the mouth is next to the word for righteousness? This is where we get our word Sadiq, Jehovah Sidkenu, righteousness. And again, the righteousness of the saints is written in two forms, bent and straightened. And remember, if you just go with me to Esther 3, I know we keep going back to these things, but I hope you see them more and more each time. Remember what we said. This is the chapter, this is Esther 3, verse 13. And we gave all the sheets out with all this on, that today we're studying. Some have asked to go back to the beginning, and that's what we're doing. And we're going to see why, when we pick these things up, we work our way backwards and see exactly what did the people who studied this Torah, what did they see? What did they think? Why are they, see here, the righteousness of the saints. And when we get to Esther 3 verse 13, it is an acrostic. It has every one of the 22 letters in, but it only has 4 of the ending letters of the 5. And the one that's missing is the Sade, because at this point, there's not the righteousness of the saints here. And if we read this, look here, the chapter here, chapter 3 of Esther, it's because it's Haman's plot, who's a type of the Antichrist. Haman was the first anti-Semite. So when we get to a very special verse, because the verses that have all of the 22 letters in, and then they add to it the ones who have the funny endings, it becomes 26 letters. Ideally, it would be 22 plus 5, which is how we get 27 letters of the New Testament. But here, when we look at this, there's only one letter missing, and we understand why. And we read it. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, which is the month of the fish. Adar, it's the month of Pisces. It's the month of the fish, and to seize their possessions as plunder. Now that is maybe for another day, but can you see that? That is not a reign of righteousness. That's just before the Antichrist is dealt with. So we can clearly see there that that is lacking. And now when we understand it better, this is not to do with the righteousness of the saints. This is to do with the persecution of the Jews. This is a lacking of God's righteousness here. And when we go to number 19, this is the word kaf, which could also be spelt with a Q. And it means really holy unto the Lord, holiness and growth cycle. And we said that is the picture of the back of the head. And I know some of you have got the handouts that we've done before. When we come to Resh, Resh is a picture of a head, Resh here, but it can be the head of wickedness. And can you remember yesterday when we got to 20, Revelation 20 is because the head of the Antichrist, the Antichrist and the false prophet are thrown into the pit. So judgment comes upon the head. So there's two ways of looking at it. You can either go the way of human reasoning, your brain is in your head, sakal, or you can be obedient and you will turn away from wickedness. So when we get to Shin, Shin is the picture of the teeth, the devouring teeth. But it also means, because he's devoured our enemies, we've got peace and protection. And this letter stands high among sacred letters. I've took this straight from a very old book, because it represents two names of God, Shaddai and Shalom. And I said to Yah, do you know God as Shalom? He said, of course, God is Shalom. Shalom is God. And that's why when we see Solomon, I know it's a funny way of saying it, King Solomon, it's his reign of peace that comes at the end of the time of the Samach, which represents the 60 people who had to come to the aid of, is the 60 representing a group of people, a group of supernatural help then that will come to the end of the people, hiding in the very symbol Samach. And this wonderful Shin has the value of 300. It's a multiple of 3, which stands for the person and character of God in the triunity. If you just turn with me, please, to Genesis. We know that 300 are the people that are with Gideon. We know that David had 300 shields. We know that the ark was 300 lengths in cubit. But while I was in my reading, the other day, and just seeing that nothing will ever change in this word. You will not invest all of this time for nothing. In Genesis chapter 45, when we've got Joseph, the heading of the chapter of Genesis 45, if Joseph deals kindly with his brothers. And we know that the sack, if you go back to 44, verse 2, the sack was put in Benjamin's cup. And this has to show every Jew who is converted had to find that their guilt has to be brought home to them in the person of the one who had no part in it at all, which was Benjamin, because he wasn't at that time born. And when Joseph said to them, look, verse 2, put my cup, and then it shows you it is the silver cup. Silver is a type of redemption, Jesus. In the mouth of the sack of the youngest, this is Benjamin, his money for the grain, and he did as Joseph had told him. The silver cup in the sack is one who bears no blame. His name is Benjamin, and that he is a type of the Messiah of Israel. And when you get down to Genesis 45, verse 22, Joseph gives gifts, and it says here, verse 22, to each of the brothers he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin, son of my right hand, he gave 300 pieces of silver, which is the number of the godly remnant, and 5 changes of garments. Surely that is how they look for the Messiah. And they see here, it's the man who has anything to do, in a sense. The 300 is an indicator. And that's what all the sues were, all the teaching that the Messiah gave. So when the lady bent over and anointed Jesus' feet with the perfume that cost 300, that too was a signal. Just go back there, please, to Mark chapter 14 and verse 3. Benjamin was given 300 changes of clothes, but the 300 to a Jewish person means the shin. It means the devourer who will devour and then be kind. He's the image on every door of the mezuzah. I've got one that I hang around my neck with a shin on it. And when you look here in the plot to kill Jesus in Mark 14, verse 3, we see it so differently now, because Jesus is the silver cup. He's never to be blamed he's never done any wrong to the Jewish people, to the Jews. Verse 3, while he was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper and reclining at the table, there came a woman with an alabaster vial or vase, a very costly perfume of pure nard. She broke the vial, poured it over his head, but some were indignantly remarking to one another, why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii and the money given to the poor. And they were scolding her. But Jesus said, so here's our true Benjamin. Let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. So we can see there, I hope you see that, how precious is this just before the power of the cross. Think of it. Just before he goes to the cross, because in the heading of the next para is the last Passover. He's about to go to Calvary. And you see this all along. The devouring of the enemy was done here. How was that devouring of the shin taking place? In the Tav, the 22nd letter, the picture of the cross, the truth and the perfection of man's final destination. And that is a picture of how, that is from a Jewish book. That is how they're looking for the Mashiach all the time. And then when you get to the Talmud here, remember Uri in Israel last year read every single week of his life. He met and still does with people to study the Talmud, and they love the Aleph Bet, and it gives a description of the meaning of the Aleph Bet, all the 22 letters. And this is how they see it. Aleph Bet, they say, stands for Aleph, which is the teacher, which is the champion, who is the oxen, is linked to the Bet. And they say it stands for learn, understanding. So there's your Aleph, A, L, O, P, H, because that would have a little O there. Aleph, Binah, Aleph, Binah. And we know where that is if we turn to Proverbs 3, verse 5. Proverbs 3, verse 5. And we see it so wonderful linked here. Proverbs 3. I'm just looking at it in my Hebrew Bible, and maybe you'll find it in yours. Proverbs 3, verse 5. I'm looking for binyah, and I can see that it's in verse 5. Trust to Jehovah. I'm reading it in the Hebrew. With all your leb, your heart, and to your understand, and do not lean to your own binyah, binyat. Don't lean, binyak. That means your understanding. Don't lean on your own understanding. That's the word we use all the time. So if we read it in our Bibles, Proverbs 3, verse 5, it says, it is trust, attack in the Lord with all your heart, leb, and do not lean on your own understanding. It is that word there, binyah, there, binyah. But who is the full binyah? And who is the tav? It's Isaiah 11, verse 2. It is the Messiah of Israel. It is the son of Jesse. And he's brought down these heavenly qualities. And we read in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 2, of how to learn the binyah. And it says here, start at 1, then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch, Netzar, from his roots will bear fruit, and the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The spirit of wisdom and understanding is Binyah. I've written it there, 998. The spirit of counsel and strength, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. So this is in the Talmud. The oxen there learn. They've gone straight from the strength of the ox to using a letter bet. There's the bet, the binyah, but they've linked the oxen with understanding, and we see it as the Messiah of Israel in Isaiah 11 verse 2. And then they say the Gimel and the Dalet. This is the Talmud. They stand, as we looked at yesterday in the 22 books of Revelation. This would be Revelation 3, the last letter, to the door opened in heaven. And the Talmud says those two letters stand together, and to be kind to the poor. And they say as well, the foot of the Gimel is stretched out to the Dalet, which is the picture of a door, indicating it is proper for those who do kindness to run after the needy. You shouldn't, if you're rich, you shouldn't give to the rich. He said it's a biblical precept to give to the poor. The foot of the Dalet is stretched towards the Gimel on the way back. Do you remember? I'm going to show you this in a moment. Can you see that little bit there? That lintel there is looking back to the kind man. That is the lintel of the door. Think of the Passover. It's looking back, look, at the kindness of the one who knocked on the door, which is the Gamel, which is the kindness to bring people to be ripe. Isn't this wonderful? The foot of the Dalet is stretched towards the Gimel because the poor person should make himself available to him. That's why he's knocking in the 3rd chapter of Revelation. He's knocking on the door. And then they say this, the Hey and the Vav is the name of the Holy One. The Hey and the Vav, Yehovah, Yod Hey, Vav Hey. Then they put these together, the Zayin, which is the sword, the Chet, which is the fence, the Tet, which is the snake or the basket, the Yod, which is the hand, the Kof, which is the palm, the Lamed, which is the shepherd's crook or the teacher. They put it together and they say these will show you favor. The Zet, the Zain, there, the Zen, will do you good. The Zayin, the 7, the double-edged sword, will do you good and give you a heritage. And he will bind, remember, look, the calf. You see why I keep repeating it? This is how you keep seeing it. They'll bind these letters, these building blocks of heaven, will put a crown upon you for the world to come. And that word there is Olam, El Olam, Olam. And that is Bo, B-O. That A would have a vowel on it. This is the world to come, and they've shown it there in the Hebrew. The Mem, you're getting near it now, because there's 2 letters, is the open and close, and it represents what we're doing. Revealed and concealed teaching. And a lot of people say, why do you look at the gematria? Well, I look at it because it's wonderful, because I found out that the snake had to, the Messiah had to be bit by the snake to bring me to God. Then you come to the Nun, bent and straight. It teaches that if a faithful person is humble and bent, he will become an erect, straight, faithful person in the world to come. Who's the one who lifts up your head if you're bent? The Messiah of Israel. And look at these 2 here, the ministry of the Samach and the eye. So this is the prop, and the door and the eye teach that one should look out and give support to the poor. This is the Talmud that Uri reads all the time. The pei is a picture of a mouth. It can be bent or straight. It alludes to having an open mouth and a closed mouth. When one is better to expand the Torah, you should open your mouth, which is what we're doing today. But if there are more qualified people than you, which is true, you should close your mouth and remain silent. So we're letting these rabbis, this paperwork for these words would have been handed down for many years. And then you come to righteousness, bent and straight again. Teach that if it is a righteous person who is humble. If you're humble, you bend down. You bend down before the Lord, you humble yourself, you bend down before others and you want to help them. He will become an erect, righteous person. Remember, Esther 3:13. The day of the anti-Semites still to come. The kaf here, the back of the head, stands for Elohim because it stands for Kadosh, 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 the Holy of Holies. Then the resh is the head. Stands, we know Jesus as our head, but the resh stands for the wicked person. Why is the face of the kaf turned away from the resh? This is the Talmud, not a Bible. God says, I cannot bear to look at the wicked one. But if he repents, I will bind upon him a crown like my own. Because if he repents and seeks to ascend, he can ascend by means of this opening. But let him ascend through there, i.e. the open part of the calf. Let me just show you. The open part of the calf. So he's looking back the head and saying, if I could go through the eye of a needle. And what did Jesus say? Not for the rich to go through the eye of a needle. Or the eye, for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. You see. Oh, well, I know we're nearly finished now. Too exciting. Now, to nearly finish. Shin stands for falsehood because the shin is the consumer of falsehood. And Rashi, a great Jewish writer, explains that each letter, we've done this before, of the emet, that's beginning with an A, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and finishing with a tav, the last letter. But inside the chaos look, the rushing water is involved in all of this, but it stands for a solid foundation. Each of those letters stand on 2 feet. But the word sheker, each letter has only one pointy foot, because the shin used to stand up on 1 foot. The sheker, the kaf, is the one that stands, that's the only one that would give it a base, the kaf, and then a resh. Each one has only one pointy foot to support it. The shin of the Torah comes to a point at the bottom. And this idea is expressed, and this is what they say. Sheker has no feet. The snake was the first creature on earth to lie in Genesis 3. He was cursed and his feet were removed. So the lies of the enemy, the snake must crawl on its belly as punishment for its association with sheker, which means falsehood, which likewise has no feet, which brings you ultimately to tav. And tav, just the letter tav itself, stands for the word truth. Okay, right. Well, we probably aren't going to do the rest of this today, are we? So I just want to show you, I think what we'll do tomorrow, if that's okay, we'll start here with the Hebrew words. And just looking, but just for you to go away and to think, we'll finish here. According to the Jessinus Hebrew Chaldee Lexicon of the Old Testament, this is what it says. about the Hebrew alphabet and the pictures that we're ultimately looking at. It means, this is an Aleph, it means an ancestor, a master, a teacher, a founder of the first ancestor, a supreme counselor, the father of the king, the author or maker. And it's used to express intimate connection and relationship. And this is for us today, brothers and sisters. The Aleph is the oxen who brings us up and nourishes us. By looking as to how the word is used in this language, we learn its meaning. All these words, I'm only going to do this one, okay, then we'll stop. Because I know it's been more than an hour, and I know you probably want to get back in your gardens, and we said it'd be an hour. I have got the notes. Can you just see this here? I just wanted us to finish here. We're going to look just by opening our Strongs at the back. If you open your Strongs for a moment and go to H27, you obviously find all the Alephs at the back. H27. And I'm turning to it. Okay, I just wanted to show you the father of judgment is the word, look, can you see? It's the word Avidan. Can you see in your Strongs 27? Abidan is the father of judgment. But when you come to the father, we're finishing here, the father of strength is H32. And Rodney and Bridget will like this because they have a daughter called Avigail. Avi, there's an A, Avigail. It means bravery. Bravery will produce strength. When you see the word Abigail, it means this. She's got strength at the beginning of her name, and she's got a home, look, with a bed, and she's got a fence, and she's got a hand, and she's got a teacher. And that's what I want to do with you over the next few weeks. Just look at her name. She's got strength of the ox. She's got a home in heaven. She's got new life, a chet, a fence. She's got a yod, which is a hand. And she's got a lamed, a shepherd's crook, a teacher. So she's got bravery, which can be produced in the time of crisis. It's Abigail. If you finish by going to 1 Samuel 25, please. I can imagine you all with your hands up in the air thinking, oh my words. But when we start, brothers and sisters, it's so hard to finish because this is medicine. This is, Richard, thank you for your text. Medicine. It is medicine. It doesn't have to be 1 Samuel 25. Should we go to verse 3? 1 Samuel 25, verse 3. Can you see? Maon was a foolish man, but he had a beautiful wife, type of Israel. The man's name was Nabal. He's a fool. Israel's married to the fool today. His wife's name was Abigail, but look at it. Look at it again. This woman was given bravery, which she will produce strength in a time of crisis. And look what the word is now, Abigail. It gives a description of her to match her name. She's intelligent. She's got the Aleph. She's beautiful. She's got a home. But the man was harsh and evil in his dealings, and he was a Calebite. Now we know that when trouble came, look at verse 18. This woman, given this name here, but look at the name now. She interfered. She came to meet David. She loaded her donkey. This lady, look at her again now that you know some of the pictures. There's an oxen. There's a home coming to her. There's a fence with abundant strength. The hand, the yod, the strength. The lamed's there, the teacher. That's what it means. That's how they look at it. which is wonderful. Abigail hurried, verse 18, took 200 loaves of bread, separation, 2 jugs of wine, 5 sheep already prepared, 5 measures of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs. She loaded her donkey. It was all in the name that had been given to her, Abigail. And as she runs and she stops David in his tracks. And look what she said, verse 20. It came about as this woman who got bravery, produced for strength in a time of need, was coming down the hidden part of the mountain, that behold, David and his men were coming down toward her. So she met them. And he actually turns, doesn't he? And he actually says that the Lord has restrained me from doing this wrong. And what a wonderful thing. Look in verse 32. David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discernment. Well, where was the discernment from? The Aleph. Blessed be your discernment, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from bloodshed and from avenging myself by my own hand. Now, I'm either thinking too much into here, or I'm just in the middle of a massive revelation of God's ultimate will by the names given. Just go to finish, and this is the end, I assure you, Psalm 43, because the Abigail, we know my daddy is joy, but I want to show you where you see the Aleph again. And the Aleph, the end of the name is in 43, verse 4. But look, go to the back of your I think it's in the Strongs, but no, you needn't do that, because I'm just going to look for it here to finish in mine. So I'm just leaning over. Hang on, I'll have to go and get my other one. I've got 3 and I'm always running around with them. Sorry, everybody. It's Gil. It's in Psalm 43, verse 4. Psalm 43, verse 4. Then I will go to the altar of God, to God my exceeding Gil, Giyl. That is the second part of Abigail's name, which is why we get the phrase Father of Joy. Abigail, Father of Joy. Then I will go to the altar of God, to God my exceeding joy, and upon the lyre I shall praise thee, O God, my God. Well, hallelujah, everybody. We'll probably finish there and just give thanks to God. So, Father, I'm looking at these words, and I just thank you that everyone has made its way to us today. Every living word, your Son became the word of God to us. He is the word of God. And we know so much. We do know so much, but we have so much to learn. And you are the finest teacher. You are our Lamed. You are our shepherd's crook. You're our Aleph. You're our strong oxen. You are our bet. Your heart is our home. You are our het. You're our fence. You're our yod. You are our hand. It's all in the name given to the woman, the bride who marries the king, who takes his residence in Zion. The fish hook has gone out, and you have drawn us to yourself. The 60 men, in a sense, we have received the support of the Samak. And Lord, I might not be very good at getting this over, but the truth of these words, it shows us how to read our Bible in a completely new way all the time. Just in her name was the oxen. In her name was the teacher. She's a picture of what the bride is today. It means Father of joy. Hallelujah. And that psalm is just before the bride arrives in Psalm, the bridegroom arrives for her in Psalm 45. Lord, I've loved your word, I know it. I've read it. I've done these notes since 7 again this morning. And Lord, we cannot have doubt, fear, unbelief, irritation, aggravation, foreboding in our hearts when we've been given the finest of the wheat again today. And for that we say thank you. And may the blessing of you, Father of joy, be on every Torah, every Talmud reader, every sage, every Orthodox Jew, everybody, everyone who gives their whole life to study these letters and these words. May your blessing be upon them as it is upon us, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.